Is he traveling? Well, we are live, and this is actually breaking news. Speaking of Housing Wire and Diego, that Jeremy may actually not make this podcast today. So, welcome to Real Fridays for those who have tuned in now and who might be tuning in later. I'm Rick Rock and Brock Cassidy. We're the co-founders of the show along with Jeremy Potter, and I represent the mortgage banking side of the world, where Brock represents kind of fintech and residential real estate tech. As CRO over at NewsZip, and Jeremy is our resident lawyer. So any complaints, allegations, or cease and desists, direct those to Jeremy Potter. But we're super happy to have Diego on our show. This is great.
Hey, thanks, Rick. It's great to be here.
You know, it's Housing Wire. It would almost be a understatement to say that Housing Wire is on fire. I always looked at Housing Wire as kind of the CNN of mortgage, housing, and real estate. How do you guys view yourselves, like as a platform?
Yeah, we think about ourselves as all things housing for the housing professional. So we don't necessarily write for the consumer. We're really writing for the loan originator, the real estate agent, the title agent, the home builder, the appraiser. You know, if you're in the housing ecosystem working as a professional, we're writing our articles, we're publishing our podcasts, we're doing our video, we're on social, really to serve you and provide you with news, data analysis, and research to help you improve your business.
And so how do you, oh, go ahead, Brock.
Yeah, I was going to say, I love how I think the vision continues to expand for you guys, or how the at least go to market of it all keeps expanding for you guys, where I use your data products all the time, like on live conversations with lenders that we work with or agents we work with. I use Housing Wire data all the time with your real-time inventory and rate and everything else, charts that you guys keep published all the time. And I know you have even, premium data products now after doing some acquisitions and probably building some stuff for yourself, I'm guessing too. And then of course the events and, industry summits business, I think is been extremely well received. And I think I saw you say that this one is sold out as well. That's coming up next week. The mortgage banking.
Yeah, we have the mortgage banking summit coming up, and it's not a oversold situation like we had with the AI summit. The AI summit, people were playing musical chairs, and it was maybe a little bit too oversold for the space that we were in, which is beautiful space in Dallas, the George Bush Presidential Library. This group that we've got now 323 or 4 based on the tickets that have come in today. It's going to be the perfect size group for that space. And the great thing is it's all senior executives. And so if you're attending, you're networking, you're learning with other senior executives. And we broadened the lens on this one. So originally it was called the IMB Summit, and that was its name last year in the first version. But this year we've broadened the lens. We're now calling it the Mortgage Banking Summit. And so we want, if you're a mortgage executive at a credit union or a community bank or a depository institution, or you're at a mortgage brokerage, you run your own brokerage, or you're a mortgage executive at a JV, we want to have you at this event. And we do have folks from all those different parts of the mortgage ecosystem, because we think we're better together. And that's kind of been a theme for us with our events. It's similar to what we do at the Gathering, where we took 2 separate events, one focused on real estate executives, the other focused on mortgage executives, and we smushed them all together because we thought that collaboration between real estate and mortgage was really important, and it's been really successful so far.
Yeah, I think that's been incredible selfishly, where, I split my time between real estate conferences and mortgage conferences. So that was a real boon for us. But I think just to even make the point even more clear, my 2 nights in Dallas next week, one of the nights planning a dinner with another like fintech real estate company, and one of the nights, because I'm going to stay the day before and the day after, to meet with some partners, and the other meeting with some builders. And so it's like those people are all out there for the event, and anyone in the Dallas community is kind of coming out a little extra because it's in their backyard. So I have, just, if you looked at my calendar, the mix of meetings I have, I think reflects exactly what you guys were going for.
I love to hear that, because it's very intentional for us. We think that there's a lot of really interesting things happening at the intersection of these different verticals. So at the intersection of mortgage and real estate, mortgage and title, mortgage and appraisal and valuation, real estate and home building. And so we want to bring executives from those different verticals together at these live events, because there is so much that's happening that's interesting, and so many partnerships, joint ventures, even mergers that are happening across those verticals. Companies aren't being shy about, like, if they're just a mortgage company pushing into real estate, or if they're just a real estate company pushing into title. People are encroaching into other verticals, and so I think it makes sense for those folks to be talking to each other.
Yeah, it is interesting how the lines are being crossed, all the time, especially in mortgage lending, because what it meant to be a mortgage broker has evolved pretty dramatically, especially with the non-delegated channel. I wrote a couple articles, or wrote a couple posts on that I think got a lot of people's attention, talking about how UWM is the largest retail platform in the country, largely through these surrogates, through these very successful companies that are plugging into their technology and their operating capacity to be able to scale on the front end, and then by leveraging UWM's back end. It's a really fascinating model, and it might be an interesting model to see how mortgage banks grow in the same manner. But it's interesting. I'm glad you dropped the independent, because there probably should be, another 100 or so, or 150 independent, or rather non-delegated correspondent mortgage lenders that I consider them mortgage banks, because they have their own warehouse lines, and they're banking on their warehouse line, to be part of these conversations, because they're taking a lot of market share, and they're threatening a lot of independent mortgage banks, traditional independent mortgage banks, by taking away volume and taking away their loan officers. So I love the fact that you're becoming a bit more egalitarian, if you will, in your appeal. I think it's smart, super smart.
Yeah, appreciate that, Rick. And again, it's been part of our trend at HousingWire for really the 7 years that I've been with the company. We've always been thinking about, okay, our audience is this, but housing is, so much bigger. And how do we talk to all those different professionals across this ecosystem and help them work better together and improve their own businesses and careers, because they're knowledgeable about these other areas of the ecosystem that are so important to what they do.
Hey, Brock, I have another follow-up question, but I didn't want to steal your thunder if you were teeing up.
No, go ahead. No, I'm a big proponent of all these events, and it behooves my travel a lot, because I usually have to travel to all these different places to meet with all these folks. So I think I'm like one of the most in the middle people.
I mean, you almost have to wonder, because there's the media space in mortgage is so fragmented, and there's only so much oxygen in the room. And I always wonder about these broker conferences. You get NAM, and then you have a number of independent conferences that are trying to sort of elbow their way to the front, for people's time and attention and their travel schedule. HousingWire surprised me in how content rich your conferences are. I wonder how much I mean, is there just that much capacity? Are you drawing from other conferences? Do you think, and by expanding your reach into more of into just the broader mortgage ecosystem, are you going to expand in the direction of the wholesale, sort of channel, or is it just purely just in this particular correspondent and mortgage banking vertical?
It's a great question, Rick. There are a lot of really good events out there, but we think we have kind of a unique take on how to do events. First of all, there aren't many events that bring together executives from these different verticals, like the Gathering does, like AI Summit does, like our Housing Economic Summit does. And now with the Mortgage Banking Summit, we've got wholesale content at that event. We've got at least one panel that I'm moderating that's focused on that channel. I think it's a really important channel. Seems like it's getting more competitive this year. And so, our perspective is, kind of better together, bring these folks together to talk and network and learn from each other and share best practices. And so, it felt like a little bit of a greenfield opportunity, especially with the Gathering, but also with AI Summit and Housing Economic Summit. Again, bringing the real estate executives together with the mortgage executives. There just aren't that many other events that are doing that. And I think the attendees have really appreciated making those connections. And so, even with all the events, and there's a ton of events, especially right now, like the fall season is pretty intense when it comes to events. And
it's incredible.
We try to avoid this time of year with our big event, the Gathering, because it's just so full of other events. But we think there's a little bit of a greenfield opportunity. Again, keeping that focus on executives, keeping the pace really fast. Our sessions aren't usually any longer than 15 or 20 minutes. And the content is really curated towards executives. And so we don't really have a tip of the spear real estate agent or loan originator event yet. I don't know if we will. I mean, I think maybe it's an opportunity for us, but the focus so far has really been on the executive and bringing executives together so that they can network and do business together.
And real estate is just simply not something that that you guys are really pursuing from a real estate leadership standpoint, brokerages and top performing real estate agents. Is that something you're going to integrate? Because that originally your Gathering concept was to really integrate, a lot of the top realtors. Is that still a priority and a focus? Or are you guys?
I mean, I think the Gathering is certainly a home for real estate brokerage leaders. Mm-hmm. I think we could probably do a little bit more to attract team leaders because a lot of the growth in real estate is happening with these teams and with teamerages. And so that's definitely a focus as we think about who we want to attract to the Gathering. But one of the core events that led to the Gathering was the Gathering of Eagles, and you referred to it before, and that was purely focused on real estate brokerage executives. And so when we merged Gathering of Eagles with HousingWire Annual, we kept we wanted to keep the target audiences for both of those events because we thought that bringing brokerage executives and the leaders of big teams on the real estate side together with IMB executives and other mortgage executives is just kind of a match made in heaven. And so, yeah, we absolutely are focused on real estate. And, from a content perspective, so setting events aside, we've got a lot of great stuff for the real estate professional. And in fact, 2 of our acquisitions over the past 7 years that I've been with the company have been squarely focused on real estate. So we acquired Real Trends, which ran the Gathering of Eagles, but also does an annual rankings. That's the most quality and verified rankings of real estate brokerages and teams and individual producers in the country. And we also acquired Altos Research, which is, is housing market data for every zip code in the country. And so as we integrate those acquisitions and bring more data into our journalism, we're very focused on the real estate professional and making sure that they are knowledgeable and can serve their clients better.
Go ahead, Brock. Sorry to cut you off earlier. Go ahead.
No. I was just going to say, as you guys think about the gathering has been, it's the best conference, that for myself, for our company that we go to every year, because we literally sit in the middle of, on top of it being an amazingly well-run event, it is squarely everyone we need to meet with is there. It was amazing last year. When you think about that versus like the summits and versus the smaller specialized events, is the thought to keep, you mentioned before, it was a kind of a green field to think about the summits and more specialized topics and things like that throughout the year. Would you go, are you guys planning on going deeper with more topical summits in more different places? Maybe that's where you kind of answer Rick's question of like doing more specialized real estate content, where you do have this specialized mortgage content a little more.
Yeah, I think we have a big opportunity there. We're actually kind of trying something out at the Mortgage Banking Summit next week. We have a smaller executive servicing roundtable the afternoon before. Rick, I think you're going to be joining us at that one. So servicing is a topic that we're thinking a lot about. It's very front and center in the industry right now, especially when rates dip. You see a lot of the servicers originating from their book and sort of taking refi business from IMBs in some ways, and other mortgage originators. And so we think servicing is one of those topics that maybe we can go deeper on at a separate summit at some point in the future.
Yeah.
The lead gen topic is really, really, really interesting for both real estate professionals and mortgage professionals, especially as you see some of these end-to-end ecosystems form where they're kind of like taking the leads and using them in their own captive businesses, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what does that mean for the rest of the real estate and mortgage verticals when more leads are being funneled into proprietary platforms? So, I think lead gen could be an interesting topic. There are a bunch of other interesting topics that I think we would explore over time. We just bought a home building publication called The Builder's Daily, and they have their own small event called the Focus on Excellence. It's a small focus workshop oriented event, but I could definitely see us doing like a home building summit at some point. New home construction, it's like the missing piece of the puzzle over the past decade, right? Like supply is such an important issue and has created such a difficult housing market at times, an unhealthy housing market at times. And so I could see a home building summit being on our radar at some point in the future.
I love that. It's funny. I was just doing an analysis on the top 250 builders in the country, in which lenders that they partner with, like the top 4 lenders, like where are they, who's doing their loans, right? And again, that's just yet another wall in the business, right? You have all these like pockets. It's very balkanized in some ways, where you have all these sectarian groups, or there's builders, but even within each vertical, there's further splinters. And I'd love to see a more integrated approach to housing and having the builder community, a part of that, the Housing Wire conferences, or having a separate maybe Housing Wire conference, calling it, like you said, Housing Wire Builder or something. Because there's no question that the future growth and getting just additional capacity is going to be new construction and the innovative solutions around. And Jeremy's done a lot of research on this, on some of the new construction concepts, that are emerging. So I think it'd be a worthwhile direction.
3D printing. All the stuff happening with ADUs out in California. There's zoning experiments that are happening across the country. They abolished single family zoning in several communities and regions. All of this stuff is just like super interesting and really, really relevant to the rest of the housing ecosystem.
Yeah.
And like, if you're, if you're a mortgage or a real estate executive, you got to know about what's going on over in home building. And so, Rick, I completely agree with you. And that's really like, that's what we've been doing over the past 7 years that I've been with the company, is trying to knock down those silos a little bit. And, even just with home builders, you think about all the different ways that mortgage companies interact with a home builder, whether it's through JVs. Several of the big home builders have captive mortgage companies. One of them actually has like almost like it's not a Craigslist, but like they've got it's called Mortgage Choice at Beazer Homes. And they've got basically all these different lenders competing for their customers' business in terms of originating the loan. So really interesting models, and like mortgage executives should be aware of what's going on.
Yeah, that's a super, and I mean, it's a growing portion of the industry, as it should be, right? Where it's like you said, even if it is only 15-20% of transactions, whatever it is today, somewhere in there, new versus existing, that is, it's still, now it's a conversation you have to have with every buyer in most markets. So it's something to be knowledgeable about, even if you are the other 80-85%. It's something we've been, NewZip has been grappling with for a long time, of helping our lenders compete with builder financing, with bundling our credits and savings with any lender credits and savings to compete with the builder financing when that buyer does ultimately go out there. And we're trying to get more, and we've been challenged by some of our lender partners that are really good at doing builder JVs or being the preferred lender of builders to kind of get that experience embedded into the builder side too. So it's something I've been getting a crash course in the past 6 months or so that Rick and I have talked about a bunch. I think it's really fertile ground where it's been like looked at as separate by most of the industry, but it's something that everyone needs to know how to play with.
Yeah, I love the vertical. We just acquired the Builders Daily, I don't know, a month and a half, 2 months ago, and we're already hiring the first reporter for that vertical, and they'll be starting next week. And so we're going to run fast and make sure that the coverage that we've got at Housing Wire for home building, matches the amazing coverage that we've got, through our mortgage pod, Flavia Furlan Nunez, Sarah Wolak, Neil Pearson's the editor of that pod. And then real estate, we've got Brooke Lee Hahn, we've got John DeLozier, and Tracy Belt is the editor of the real estate pod. We want that home building pod, to be as stacked and as powerful and as hungry as those two other pods that we've got in our newsroom.
What are some areas that you guys that you as the president of Housing Wire, the executive at Housing Wire, think you wouldn't want to go into? You guys have expanded into the data business, expanded the channels that I guess you're still playing the media role, just in more channels.
Yeah.
What are some of the areas that you guys think about, not going into?
We're probably not going to do a B2C. So we're probably not going to be, I should never say never, but like, I just don't think our path takes us to, writing home buying content for folks who want to buy a home. I think we could do a good job of it, but I just think we're so focused on the housing professional, and it's such a fertile area for us to grow. So I would say that's probably, not where we want to go. You've seen a lot of media companies, go back into print. I don't see us going back into print. We had a magazine before. I don't see us doing that again. I think print's time is for the most part done.
That's like going back into records, going back into vinyl. It's like there's a niche for it.
There's a huge vinyl community now, and
it's a niche though.
Pretty cool. I just don't see us doing that again. If thinking about where we might want to go next, if you look at multifamily, if you look at that relationship between for sale and for rent, it's a really important relationship. And so I think we're kind of missing something in our all things housing coverage by not having a lot about multifamily. So that's probably an area that we're going to think a lot about over the next couple of years, because we feel like at this point we've got the whole single family residential housing ecosystem covered, and we do a really good job of it, especially now that we have the Builders Daily. We're covering all the angles, we're covering the intersection of all those different verticals, and so we just need to go deeper, get better data, do better analysis, publish better research, do more podcasts, write more news articles. But if I think about like other verticals that we might want to push into, multifamily looks like a pretty good one.
How do you balance out the sort of the pay to publish, right? I mean, there's obviously HousingWire is a business, right? It's not like a journalistic enterprise is not a nonprofit, right? So it's not entirely independent, but at the same time, there's always that stretch between trying to be independent with your journalism, and at the same time leave room for ad placements and paid for content kind of placements, that kind of thing. Like, how do you do that? I mean, I've been criticized online for saying that I think you guys do a pretty good job at that balance, and then people will say like, no, you can't please everybody, and you'll get people who will say that HousingWire is kind of a pay to play kind of scheme, if you will. And
sure.
And I don't think that's the way it is at all. But at the same time, how do you manage that balance, between the journalistic integrity and then the business model itself?
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the most important question of this of today, of this conversation. It's a really important balance, and it's a really hard to strike balance. But the cool thing about the HousingWire business is there's a natural tension in the business that I think forces us to make the right decision when it comes to separation between church and state, or separation between the business and the newsroom. And the fact that we have a very robust subscription business where our audience is paying us to read our content, to look at our data, to look at our analysis, we can't break that trust by being shady about pay to play, right? Yeah. So we have a very clear distinction between the business and the newsroom. So I run the business. Sarah Wheeler, our editor-in-chief, runs the newsroom, and the newsroom covers what they want to cover. And sometimes that actually leads to some pretty uncomfortable conversations for me and uncomfortable interactions for me, because I have to explain to maybe a big marketing client or some other big industry player, why it's so important that the newsroom can cover what they want to cover. Ultimately, our audience is going to disappear if we are in fact pay to play. Like, you're not going to be as engaged, and you're certainly not going to pay to subscribe to HousingWire if it's a hack shop that does pay to play. And so I feel pretty comfortable and confident saying every day that we are not pay to play. Yes, we absolutely run advertising, but we're very transparent and clear about where the advertising goes on the page. If it's sponsored content, we're very clear in our designation that it is sponsored content and that someone's paying to have that piece of content published. So this is one where I just feel very comfortable and confident in our editorial policy and that separation that we really talk about and think about every day. The final point on this is we wouldn't have such good journalists in our newsroom, like a Flavia, like a Brookley, like our editors, Neil and Tracy, and we wouldn't have Sarah Wheeler as our editor-in-chief if we were screwing around with this. We just wouldn't. They would go work for someone else that does a better job of keeping those things separate. And so they keep us really honest, with things like what the call out needs to be if something is an advertisement or a sponsored article. We get feedback from our newsroom all the time when we try to innovate with that stuff. And if they don't like and they don't think that it's transparent enough, they feel very free to let us know. And so again, I feel very comfortable and confident on this point that we've set things up right and have the right incentives in place so that we're going to avoid being a pay to play shop.
Yeah, I love that. And I will say that Kate Barry is one of my favorite writers on the American Banker publication, and Flavia reminds me a lot of her in that Kate is a very, very serious writer, a very serious investigative sort of journalist. She's very smart within sort of banking and finance. I've done a lot of interviews with her in the past. And so I think, under Sarah's leadership, I've been really impressed. I think just with the content, I think that's what draws your subscriptions as high as they are, is just purely, they don't want to miss out. I mean, that's why I'm a subscriber of the Housing Wire Plus, is because there's content in there that I got so frustrated not paying for it because I'd click on an article that I thought was a really interesting article, and I got sick of not getting access to those articles. So I just, and it's not even that expensive, but the content is king. I think that's really where it comes down to, and then the business model sort of flows from that.
And there's also just the trust that you build with your audience. That trust can disappear so fast. And if you look at our revenue mix since I joined, when I joined, just over 7 years ago, we were 90% advertising. And so when you're 90% advertising, you've got a different set of incentives.
Yeah.
We're now less than 50% advertising. So again, we have these big, robust subscription businesses that rely on that trust with the audience. And even if you look at like events, right? Like, I don't think people would buy some pretty expensive tickets to our events, if they thought we were just sort of a hacky pay to play shop. I think they buy those tickets because they know we can deliver really strong content, and they know we can deliver a really strong executive audience, by the way, who all read Housing Wire because it's not pay to play.
Yeah. That's something that I've noticed is really different at your events, and I guess, beyond just Housing Wire, the best events we go to. I went to the same real estate industry events for 10 years before I really got into like the mortgage industry, when I was more firmly on the real estate side. And those events were really like a race to the bottom of like clearly 90, I don't know, maybe 95%, pay to play content. And so it got to the point where the sessions were not worth much. The content was not worth much. And maybe you went for the networking and things like that, but it's a totally different feel. I give you guys a lot of credit for having a totally different feel there of actual different opinions, actual panels with people that may actually not have paid to be the one on the panel, things like that.
Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing that up, Brock, because again, a lot of intentionality there, and when we set up the agenda for an event, we've got a certain number of slots where they're sponsored slots, and we're very clear that you can pay us to get on stage, but we're going to say, hey, this is a sponsored session brought to you by whoever. But what's really interesting is, and you see this with our sponsored content on our site as well. The quality of the content is so good on housingwire.com and at our events that even the sponsored sessions bring it. Like sometimes the sponsored sessions are like some of our best attended, most lively and engaging sessions, because they know that they're competing against all these other panels and sessions that are going to bring it, right? Yeah. Another thing that we try to do with our events,
they don't want to be the one that stands out as the audience.
They don't want to be the one that stands out. And another thing that we really try to do with our events is we love our technology partners, but when an event becomes 60, 70, 80, even 90% vendors, that's a really rough experience for everybody, right? Like if you're a practitioner, you're just getting bombarded all day long and you can't really get anything done. And if you're a technology partner, a vendor, you're just competing against so many other people to talk to the few people that are actually that you can actually do business with. It just becomes a mess and a very difficult conference to enjoy and bring insights away from. And so we just keep that technology partner ratio low, and we're intentional about how we price technology partner tickets to make sure that that ratio is going to be under 50%. And we really try to keep it under 40%, closer to 30% at our events. And that just makes it better for everybody, a better experience for everybody.
So where do you take HousingWire from here? I think, we've seen publishing evolve quite a bit, right? I mean, you and I are about the same age. It's like we look at the evolution going from print to digital, from digital to ads to subscription-based services. Like, where do you go from here? Is it a Bloomberg play where like HousingWire becomes the data repository where like I mentioned CNN or other news outlets who are just purely sort of secular outlets who need that data to have stories themselves on housing, that they really need HousingWire as sort of the fundamental sort of resource for housing and news data, or what's the play like beyond what you guys are doing? Because it's like you're kind of a media company, subscription-based software company, you're a conference company. Like, what's next, and where do you take the company from here?
Yeah, Rick, I love the reference to Bloomberg. Clayton Collins, our CEO, and I have been talking about becoming the Bloomberg of housing again since I joined the company 7 years ago. So you nailed the vision. That is the vision. We want to be all things housing across news, data, analytics, and research. For the whole housing ecosystem. I mean, it's in the name, right? Like, we're not Mortgage Wire or Real Estate Wire. We're Housing Wire. And so, being the Bloomberg of housing is definitely it. I think it's getting pretty interesting now with AI, right? So, one of the things that we need to think about, and you talked about the evolution of media, the next evolution is already happening. Our kids, my older son, he never searches on Google. Anything he wants to know about, he's asking GPT, about. And so if you think about that shift, and it's going to happen, I think, I don't know if Google search goes to zero because they've got their own AI answers that they're integrating into that experience, but it's definitely getting impacted. And a lot of publishers get a lot of their traffic from, including HousingWire, get a lot of their traffic from search experiences. And so we have to think about, what it means to be a media and information services company in the age of AI, where people aren't necessarily going to Google or Bing, they're going to ChatGPT or they're going to Claude to get answers to their questions, including about questions about housing. And so we need to make our media and data accessible in the right way to the LLMs and to these chat experiences, or we're going to lose out on the next generation. So that's pretty tricky, and we're thinking a lot about that right now. And there's something called Model Context Protocol, which is kind of a way to arrange your site and your information so that it's more accessible to the LLMs. We're thinking about all this stuff right now because that is going to be the future, and it's already been arriving, right? We're already seeing traffic from Google declining, traffic from the AI experience, AI platforms increasing. Yeah,
that's
nice.
Fascinating. Go ahead, Brock. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, No, that makes a lot of sense. The optimization there is getting totally different. But going another direction, for you guys do such a great job at the events for executives and things like that. What do you recommend people that maybe don't have the budget to go to summits or the gathering? Obviously, you guys, I think you guys do a lot of the like coordinated content that you publish alongside the events.
Sure.
Do you do things like live, like are any of the content live streamed or anything like that for people that can't make it, for example, to the Mortgage Banking Summit next week?
Yeah, we haven't done live streaming yet. It is something that we're thinking a lot about because there is demand for it for sure. It does require some technical infrastructure that costs real money, and so we have to think about. There's also like an exclusivity that comes with attending events that gets a lot of people to buy the ticket, and so we have to balance a lot of things. We do,
and maybe people like saying something to a small audience, but not to have forever.
That's actually a huge point, Brock. There are a bunch of speakers who would prefer not to like be going to a wide audience. So that's another thing we have to balance and think about. We do make a lot of our event content available on demand to people who buy an on-demand ticket or people who are HousingWire subscribers. It's usually available, a couple days after the event. So on demand is already an option for a lot of our event content, and we'll continue to think about the live streaming because again, we're getting a lot of requests for it, and it is an interesting way, especially if we're already going to be sold out, and a lot of our events are sold out. Why not open it up even further? Obviously considering the executives that maybe don't want to have such a wide audience for some of the stuff that they're going to say. We just got to think about all the different variables. But we do want to make that content as widely available as possible. And you're absolutely right. We call it the flywheel at HousingWire. We do cover a lot of the topics and speakers and content at our events in other formats. So on the website, in our email newsletters, in our podcasts, a lot of the speakers that you'll see at our events will show up at some point, either in my podcast or in Sarah Wheeler's podcast. Right. So we've got that content flywheel where we can also have these topics show up.
Yeah. I'll give Clayton a shout out too. I'm on a committee with on the MBA for basically under I think it's under 40 year old mortgage industry participants, and it's all about like getting access to conferences that people new to the industry normally can't afford and things like that. And Clayton takes a pretty active role in trying to think about ways to, not necessarily even just for HousingWire, but to help with that, like those educational goals for people new to the industry or young in the industry. That a lot of it's around scholarships to go to actual educational events within the MBA. Some of it's around going to conferences. Some of it's around doing some of the courses that the MBA offers. But Clayton's kind of taken a fairly active role there on a committee that I'm on, and I think that doesn't go unnoticed. That HousingWire tries to the people at HousingWire as well as the company seem to want to be a part of making everything more accessible, which is nice.
No doubt.
I love it. Well, I'd love to. The last plug I'd say is that the Brock and I spoke at a conference in New England, in New Hampshire. It was the New England Mortgage Banking Conference, and we actually set up the Real Fridays podcast at the conference. So not only were we, doing a session, leading a kind of a Q&A session for the attendees, but we actually broadcasted it live, and I'm. In the evolution of media, there's so many of these really talented podcasts that are evolving, right, by individual personalities. And they're, blurring a lot of lines between journalism, between insider information, between just industry leaders who are content rich and have something to share that's interesting. And then legacy traditional media, whose job it is to be the beacons of this information. It's interesting. I wonder if there's a hybrid opportunity to kind of mix and match some of these leading sort of voices that are emerging and to put them under sort of a Housing Wire sort of umbrella. I'm not sure what that might look like, but we had a really good session. Not only was it great online, but it was just great to cast what otherwise would have just been lost to a private conversation of 150 industry professionals into a small conference room hotel in New Hampshire, to something that could be broadcast nationally, where people could plug into to see what was happening in New England and some of the local players in New England. So I wondered if you had thought about just that part of how you integrate these podcasts into the Housing Wire ecosystem.
I think about it every day. And it's not just the podcasts. You look at, you broke a story yourself a couple weeks ago on LinkedIn, Rick. And it's really interesting what's happening on LinkedIn. And our newsroom is making sure that they're staying current with certain people on LinkedIn, because to your point, there is some information that gets shared with some executives in the industry before it gets shared with Housing Wire sometimes. And so we got to stay, really current and really connected with folks like yourself, or really with both of you and Jeremy, so that, you trust us and feel confident in sharing some of those stories with us. But yeah, I think there is an opportunity. Yeah. And we try to get after it a little bit we've got a contributor network where we're out of our content studio, we're publishing opinion pieces from industry executives, mortgage executives, real estate executives, title executives, home building executives, et cetera. And so that sort of gets after it, but you're right that there's stuff happening in podcasts that we'd love to incorporate.
Well, that's great. Yeah. Well, I love the fact that you were able to join us sort of last minute like this. We've been wanting to have you on the show, which is why I reached out to you yesterday. And Brock's brought your name up a number of times. And so I was just happy that you were able to jump on and to suggest tomorrow, which was today. So thanks for doing it, man. This is great.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I figured it would be timely to talk about the summit a little bit, but we'll certainly have you back on other topics when Jeremy's here as well.
And maybe we'll broadcast live. Maybe we'll broadcast live at the Mortgage Banking Conference next Tuesday. You never know.
There you go. Well, I'll see both of you next week, which will be awesome. And really appreciate you having me on the show and talking about all the stuff that we talked about. It's really important stuff.
Appreciate you, Diego. Thank you, Brock. Thank you, bro. And we'll rub it into Jeremy later when we see him.
Yeah, we'll see you guys next week.
All right, take care.